Good evening, all. Welcome to the 10th episode of Let's Talk Engineering, jointly organized by Civilianz and Swadeshi Science Movement in association with Indian Society for Technical Education, Association of Engineers Kerala, Kerala Self-Financing Management Engineering College Association, and Energy Conservation Society. Today, our topic of the talk is engineering capabilities of the Harappans. And we are very blessed to have with us today many outstanding personalities from the field of engineering and science. First of all, I would like to welcome the backbone of Civilianz family, who has extended her unwavering support in all our ventures and activities. Dr. B.G. Sridevi, former director NATPAC and advisory board member Civilianz. I extend my warm welcome to you, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. I would also like to welcome the chief guest of the day, Professor Dr. Wasan Shinde, former founding director general, National Maritime Heritage Complex, Lothal. Sir will be delivering the technical talk of the day on the topic engineering capabilities of the Harappans. On behalf of the Civilianz family, we extend a warm welcome to you, sir. Welcome to the function. We are also blessed to have with us Dr. U.S. Harish, Senior Member, Swadeshi Science Movement, Thiruvananthapuram, and Senior Principal Scientist, CSIR, NIIST. Welcome to the function, sir. We are very glad to have you with us. And we are also blessed to have respected Sir Engineer I.V. Sushil, General Secretary, Association of Engineers Kerala, and also Assistant Executive Engineer, Irrigation Department, Kerala. Welcome to the function, sir. And next, I would like to welcome Professor J. Kumari V., representative member of Indian Society for Technical Education, Kerala, and she's also the retired professor and HOD of Civil Engineering Department, Government Engineering College, Thrissur. We are so privileged to have you, ma'am, on this function. Welcome to the function, ma'am. I would also like to welcome Dr. K. Soman, President, Energy Conservation Society, to this function. A warm welcome to you, sir. Moving on to the function, I would like to begin with the presidential address. And for that, I would like to welcome respected Dr. B.G. Sridevi ma'am, former director NATPAC and advisory board member of Civilianz. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, Engineer Jeeva. So, respected Professor Dr. Vasan Shinde, Dr. Harish, Engineer Sushil, Professor Jayakumari, Dr. Soman, Jeeva and Revit, and all the faculty of Civilianz Group, and all other participants and engineers who are attending this program. A very good evening to all of you. It is a pleasure for me to say a few words at this prestigious and very important moment. We are now here for the 10th episode of Let Us Talk Engineering, organized by the Civilianz Group and the Swadeshi Science Movement. So far, 9 topics of utmost relevance to the current scenario of this state have been debated by us. Today, we are discussing about the engineering capabilities of the Harappans. This, I hope, will be an eye-opener to all the engineers who are attending this program. So, all of us know that ancient India has many engineering marvels which have got mentioned worldwide, and we are very proud of these engineering marvels. But the secret of construction and sustenance of most of these marvelous structures, ancient structures, are yet to be disclosed to the scientists who have been trying to know about them. So, at this moment, this great topic selected by the civilians need attention. And with great pleasure, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Vasan Shinde for agreeing to talk to us on this very important topic of interest. And This will help us to know about the engineering capabilities of our sacred land. Also, the great effort taken by the young professional group of civilians and in imparting the relevant knowledge to the engineers of this country is worth mentioning. I take this opportunity to congratulate the civilians team for the great job they are doing for the society. Also, thanks and congrats to the associating institutions also. I don't want to take much of your time because the relevant part of the program is coming and I should give time for our great speaker to say about us, about all these marvels. And so with these few words, I'm stopping and I'm concluding for the great talk which we are all eagerly waiting for you. Thank you once again, sir. And thank you all the participants and civilians once again. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, the most awaited session of the day. Technical talk on the topic engineering capabilities of the Harappans. And to deliver the technical talk, we have with us our esteemed chief guest, Professor Dr. Wasan Shinde, former founding Director General, National Maritime Heritage Complex, Lothal. He is a pioneer in archaeological research since last 43 years. He has also served as a former Vice Chancellor of Deccan College, Pune. He is also the editor in chief of the international research journal Ancient Asia. He has also been served as the fellow in Bhatnagar. With all respect and great pleasure, I would like to welcome Shinde sir to deliver the technical talk. Please, sir. Sir will join us at any moment from now. So I would like to request the participants to be patient. Professor Vasan Shinde sir is now with us. With all respect, I would like to welcome our esteemed chief guest, Professor Vasan Shinde sir, to deliver the technical talk. Please, sir.
Thank, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Sir?
Hello.
Sir, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Sir, am I audible? Yes, sir, we can hear you.
You are audible. Yeah, you are audible.
Sir, I can hear you as well.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much for inviting me for this evening's session today. I am extremely happy to be here because I understand that there are some lot of engineering students and faculty, and I would like to, take the pride that the Indians 4,500 years ago they were considered to be the best civil engineers in the world. So we are carrying forward the legacy, and I would like to give you the actual evidence in this respect. Why we were considered as the best civil engineers in the past, and even today, of course, we have some best brain, in fact, in the world in this particular field. So I will share my screen, and I will start with my PPT. Just let me know once my PPT is visible.
Sir, can you
Is
share the
visible?
PPT on the screen?
Yeah, I have shared already. Can you see
Okay, sir, we got it, sir. We can see that.
full screen?
Yes, sir. It is
Okay.
visible on the full screen.
So I will be discussing about the capabilities of the Harappans, ancient Indians, because I always consider that Harappans have laid the foundation of the Indian culture because most of the sciences, technologies, traditions, and cultural elements that were introduced by the Harappans have continued till today, and we are proud to feel that we are carrying for that particular legacy of the Harappans. Now, in the past, maybe around 4,500 years ago, there were three civilizations in the world. We call them as ancient civilizations. And let me tell you that all the civilizations flourished in Asia only. One of them, of course, is the Egyptian civilization, which flourished in the middle and upper reaches of Nile River. Then the Mesopotamian civilization, which flourished between Tigris and Euphrates River in Iraq and part of Iran, and the Harappan civilization. It is also known as the Indus Valley civilization or Indus civilization. Now, this flourished in a very large area in the northwest part of the subcontinent. In fact, the extent is very very maybe if you can put together the area of the Mesopotamians and Egyptians, the Harappans have still double the area of that. So you can imagine how much area was occupied. So we find sites right from the border of Iran down south up to the border of Maharashtra, and from the western part of UP to the entire Makran coast. That was the area occupied. And all the three civilizations, of course, they had interaction, very strong connection with each other because of the trade contact. And also now it is clear that the developments were happening independently in these three regions. Earlier, it was thought that maybe Mesopotamians were the earliest, and from there on, the people began to move to Indian subcontinent. That is not true. Now we know that the beginning of the agriculture started around 7,000 BCE, and there is a constant development which culminated into the formation of the Harappan culture around 2,500 BCE. So that is the brief history in this regard. Now, given a choice, and before I maybe mention that why the discovery in fact made exactly 101 years ago, and why this discovery was considered to be the most important, one of the most important archaeological discoveries in the world in 20th century, mainly because before the discovery of the Harappan civilization, most of the scholars thought that there is a big gap in the history of South Asia, particularly Vincent Smith, one of the British scholars. He maintained that India jumps from Stone Age to the Stupa period, or that is the Buddhist period, and he said that the settled life began much later, and there's a big hiatus in the history of this country. So that was the hypothesis or statement made by the scholars. And with the discovery of the Harappan civilization, the antiquity of the settled life, they were pushed back by almost 3,000 years, and now we boast of a continuous history for almost 2 million years. The earliest stone tools found in Indian subcontinent that dated to around 2 million, that is 20 lakhs. From 20 lakhs to the present, we have such a tremendous continuity, in this part of the world. Perhaps, India is one of the few countries, maybe China to some extent has, but India has that continuity for such a long period. So we always connect ourselves to the roots, and the roots go back to the Harappan times. Uh, Given a choice, you will always say that you would like to visit, maybe Egyptian side because you can see these type of pyramids, or there are a lot of public architecture developed by the Egyptian people, like pyramids, for example, or maybe these type of big temples. You do find these are the temples which are dated to maybe around 4,500 or even 5,000 years old. So that is they have created such a monumental architecture in that part. So everybody is attracted to this. They want to see this. Also, they also created more than life-size images, temples, So these are the evidences from the some of the Egyptian sites. We can see a lot of maybe life size or more than life size images produced by these people. Then in Mesopotamia, we have these type of ziggurats or the big temples. These are also monumental architecture that was created by the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians. The Harappans have not done that, and therefore, most of the people always think that perhaps Harappans were not capable or they were not competent enough to create these type of monumental architecture. But that's not true. Let me tell you that this is one of the tombs, the the tombs found in Ur. This is the tomb of the Tutankhamen, and the amount of wealth that was buried along with these dead bodies or the royal dead bodies was incredible. And you can see that this particular tomb was looted, but still you can see the wealth that was buried along with the king, his entire maybe army, a lot of the chariots which were used by him. They were part of the burial goods. So from that, people think that these civilizations were very, very rich, very prosperous. But the difference between the Harappans and the Mesopotamians is that uh, Harappans were capable. Perhaps I will say that they were much more competent in this respect because, as I said, that they were the best civil engineers in the contemporary world. And if they had decided, they could easily have created these type of monumental architecture. But they have not done because the system was different. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, they were ruled by the kings and queens. So every development, every maybe activity happened there was around these maybe rulers. But in the Harappan region, of course, it was completely different story because Harappans had some kind of a democratic setup, what we call as the panchayat system. The maybe the decisions were taken collectively, by the people for the people. So that was the philosophy of the Harappans. That is one thing which is we should keep in mind. Secondly, the Harappans could have easily buried wealth along with the dead bodies, but they did not do that because we find very symbolic, maybe few pots, few ornaments, few maybe their maybe weapons. But because they knew that if this wealth is buried along the dead body, perhaps that is gone forever. That cannot be used for any purpose. Literally, the Harappans have looted the Mesopotamians and Egyptians. They're getting so much wealth from that side, and they have used that wealth for the welfare of the common people. Whereas in Mesopotamia and Egypt, the entire wealth was used for the maybe showcasing the status of the king or the queen there. So that was the difference. The philosophy of the Harappans was different. And one thing is clear that the Mesopotamians and Egyptians, they're very, very aggressive people. They did carry out number of invasions, number of wars were fought by them, and they had standing army. This is actually evidence from some of the Egyptian sites. Then also they conquered some areas. They subjugated the people and they made them slaves, and these slaves were used by the people for the construction of those monumental architects like pyramids, ziggurats, or life-size images. That was not done by Harappans. Harappans were definitely peace-loving people, and they did create some monumental architecture, but that was for the usage of the people, like fortification, for example, or the water harvesting, water management system. Tremendous amount of evidence we have. So they have done this type of monumental architectural or civil engineering for the sake of the people, and that was created by the community, by the people. So the concept of by the people for the people started from the Harappans. It is not a imported concept at all. It is a very much Indian concept. This map gives you idea about the Harappan area. As I mentioned that nearly 2.5 square kilometer area 2.5 million square kilometer area was occupied by the Harappans. We have discovered nearly 2,000 sites, out of which there are five mega cities. In this map, you can see the location. The site of Rakhigadi was the biggest Harappan city, followed by Mohenjo-daro, then Harappa, Dholavira, and Ganveriwala. And then, of course, the other settlements are in the category of towns, maybe regional centers, maybe manufacturing centers, ports, agricultural settlements, etc. So this is the composition of the settlements of the Harappans. And at number of sites, including Rakhigadi, we have found the evidence of the gradual growth of the Harappan civilization. We use two terms. One is Harappan culture, the other one is Harappan civilization. And the culture starts maybe around 6000 BCE. And from 6000 BCE, there is a continuous development up to 2500 BCE, 2600 BCE. And then, of course, that culture has transformed into urban phase. And that urban or the prosperous phase of the culture is called the Harappan civilization, which lasted up to 1900 BCE. And then after that, there is a decline. And at number of sites, we have the evidence of the gradual growth, how the transformations taken place in their structures, in their maybe other equipments like pottery, ornaments, basic technology, basic sciences. We have a lot of evidence from number of Harappan sites. Uh, this is one site, in the Saraswati Basin, close to Rakhigadi. And here, for the first time, we have found the early date for the beginning of the Harappan culture, 6000 BCE. And there are successive levels, and in the successive levels, one can see the transformation, how that transformation happened. So we have very strong evidence at this site, at Farmana, other site which I excavated, and also the site of Rakhigadi. So, and then of course, finally, they have achieved the development we started around 600 BC that culminated in the formation of urban phase or well-planned cities and towns. That phase happened maybe around 2600 BC. So there was a long precedence, long developmental phase. It is not that suddenly the Harappan cities have come into existence. There's a long precedence for that, and we have found evidence in this respect. And finally, around 2500 BCE, they were able to develop these type of well-planned cities, which are very very hygienic and very clean. Now, one the technology that was developed by the Harappans, which is followed even today, the most scientific construction method was developed by the Harappans, and today the entire world is following this particular tradition. Now, this method is called sorry, this method is called English bond construction method. In when the wall is constructed of brick, one line of the brick is placed horizontal, next line is brick, is placed vertical. So most of these structures, this is the evidence from the site of Mohenjo-daro. At Mohenjo-daro, all the structures were made of burnt bricks, and Harappans had created bricks in proper ratio. They were in 1 is to 2 is to 3 and 1 is to 2 is to 4. So that this ratio was very important, so that they can undertake these type of scientific construction method, and certainly they can maintain this perpendicular angles also because of this particular creation of the building material by the Harappans. That is one thing. So they for the what you are seeing here, this is it looks like a tower, but this is a actually Harappan Whale. It was constructed or built at this particular level, but this was dug maybe in 20s, and that time the archaeologists were not really aware about how to dig whales because they were not really able to identify. So they dug it, like a tower, but this is actually, and in both in fact, this is a proper wall, and this is the proper brick construction of the whale. And at both the places, we could see the use of the English bond method. It is wrong to call English bond because English people were not aware about this bond, till 1400 CE, and therefore I prefer to call this as Harappan bond because Harappans were the first to develop this particular concept in the world, and they were first to use that. And we have the actual evidence from the Harappan sites, Harappan cities. So that is one important contribution of the Harappans. Then, most of the town planning that was developed by the Harappans, that has not died down. In fact, even though maybe the urbanization failed, maybe around 1900 BC decline, but still the knowledge was surviving in the Indian subcontinent. And then, of course, that knowledge was used, in fact, maybe in 6th century, 5th century CE, now BC, for the development of second urbanization. And then, of course, from that, there is a continuity in the same layout. And you can see, this is the village in Haryana, and the layout of the village is exactly same as the Harappan layout. Even the width of the roads are exactly same as the Harappan. The dimension is same. The roads are made by the brick paving. There are structures on both sides, and well planned. So this is the pattern which has continued without any interruption, and therefore, as I say that we connect ourselves to the roots, and the roots go back to the Harappan times. Then these Harappans also built. They brought water to the settlement. In fact, because they did find difficulty. In fact, or the evidence from Harappa and Mohenjo clearly indicate that the water was quite deep in the river course, and perhaps it was difficult for them to bring water to the settlement, and therefore they were the first in the world to develop this concept of a whale. We have found a lot of these whales, and at Dholavira, the Harappan whale is still being used by the people there. So you can imagine, the continuity in this particular respect. And for constructing, these whales, they created the wedge-shaped bricks. In fact, of the one end of the brick was narrow, and the other end was broad. So these kind of bricks were made. You can see here, in fact, the construction of the whale here. So this is again a very very important concept of the Harappans. Then the other thing that they incorporated in their maybe structures were two important elements. Again, they were the first in the world to think about this and implement these particular elements. One is the bathroom inside the structure, inside the house. Here you can see, maybe you will feel that this is a modern bathroom, but actually this is a bathroom excavated at the Harappan site of Kalibangan in Rajasthan. So they developed this particular concept. Not only that, they also have produced these tiles. They of course they made terracotta tiles, mud, clay tiles which are fired, but you can see the 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 motifs on them. So there is a continuity in that. Maybe the medium has changed over the period, but this concept has not really discontinued discontinued at any stage. Most of us always thought that this concept has come from the West, but actually it was developed here, and maybe other it spread, the idea spread to other parts of the world and went to maybe dispersed to other parts of the world. So this is one important component which was introduced by the Harappans. And the other component that was found inside the structure is the toilet. And you can see here one of the toilets excavated at the site of Harappa, and you can see here commode. Again, as I would like to mention that a lot of people think that the concept of commode has come from the West, but not that is not the case. Actually, this was the concept which was developed by the Harappans, and we have the earliest evidence of its kind anywhere in the world at the Harappan sites. What is also interesting is that inside the maybe bathroom, we found one big jar, and in the big jar there is a small lota. So even today, the bathrooms in the rural part, we always have maybe sorry the toilets in the rural part. we always keep a bucket of water and a lota in that, maybe mug. So that tradition again continues from the Harappans, and you can see, proper drainage system which was developed by the Harappans. Harappan cities were very, very clean because of the development, because of the drainage pattern that was developed by the Harappans. We find the evidence of two kinds of drainage pattern. One is the closed drainage, like we can see here, and the other one is the open drainage. The open, of course, is attached to the bathrooms, and the closed one, to the toilets, making sure that that no dirty water is sprayed within the settlement. And also, you can see here, they have used simple, you know, very very simple, technique for developing this. They followed the gradient pattern. The water was flowing for the higher levels to the lower levels, and you can see that they had a network of the drainage in the Harappan cities. So every house had a toilet and bathroom, and they had proper outlet for both. And there was probably the network available, which we have excavated at some sites. And also, what we have found that that network was joined, attached to the main drainage line, which was a big line, and that drainage line was taken outside the city wall and emptied somewhere. Now you can see this is the evidence of the main drainage at the site of Harappa. You can see the amount, this the size of this, because the entire drainage of the city was attached to these. So they're quite big in size, and this opening is outside the city wall. As I mentioned that the because of that, the Harappans were able to maintain that strict cleanliness in the Harappan cities, and that was reflected in fact in the in the health of the Harappans. We have excavated some Harappan sculptural remains at Rakigadi and other sites, and some of my Korean colleagues, they were interested in finding out the pathology, how the people have died, what type of diseases prevailed that time. And at the end of the study, they were so disappointed. They said that Harappans were so healthy, we don't find major disease in them, and that is mainly because the Harappans followed very very strict, cleanly, clean hygienic in fact life. And at the site of Mohenjo-daro, in the street, we find the the uh, garbage disposal pits also, or garbage disposal, maybe small chambers that is found. So today, in fact, the we have forgotten this particular tradition, but let me tell you that this cleanliness is in our blood, and because of maybe some reasons we have forgotten that, but now we want to bring it back, and there is a strong evidence of that, and this is the kind of evidence we have from the Harappan sites. This particular structure found at Mohenjo-daro. Now, this is always considered to be a public bath. Maybe there are different, maybe opinions, different hypotheses. Some say that maybe this is just maybe a sweet water tank. Maybe some say that it was maybe for religious purpose. But let me tell you that the evidence. When I visited the site of Mohenjo-daro twice, in fact, I went there. I observed this structure very carefully. In this photograph, you can see that there is a well nearby, near the structure, very close, and it seems that the water was drawn from the well and maybe filled the tank. The tank was periodically maybe clean and repaired. The flight of steps that you see here, probably they were made for maintenance purpose, not for people to go down every day. And second important evidence is that there are a number of rooms all around the structure. So this particular concept is very much part of the modern swimming pool. So I believe that the concept of swimming pool was introduced by the Harappans, and this is perhaps the best example of its kind, anywhere in the world. And then I would like to mention, if I know how the Harappans used to plan the cities. This is something that we should learn. Our planners should learn from the Harappans. And the best example is, of course, from the site of the Lavira. Dolavira, that this is the 40th World Heritage Site. UNESCO has identified this as one of the important World Heritage Sites recently, and this is the first Harappan site which has got that tag. This city was located in the desert part. Today, of course, this entire Khadir Island in Kutch part of Gujarat, which is on the next to very close to the border of Pakistan. Now, this island, the entire island is almost barren completely because it is all covered with salt, and that salt, does not allow anything to grow on the land. So it makes the land completely infertile, completely saline, which is of no use for for any purpose like agriculture or any in other purpose. But Harappans had to build this particular city because the Harappans, they did care for their trade because they were not in a position to have a lot of, or they had no luxury of a lot of natural resources. So they had to import the natural resources from different places. They had the technology with them. So they, maybe imported the raw materials from elsewhere, and they also developed number of, important trade routes. For example, there was a trade route between Sindh and Saurashtra, because in Sindh there's a very important site like Mohenjo-daro, and Mohenjo-daro has the evidence of very strong evidence of manufacturing activities. We do have evidence of that at Mohenjo-daro. And then, of course, Saurashtra has a lot of natural resources or close to the natural resources because there are lot of natural resources on the border of Gujarat and Maharashtra, on the border of Gujarat and Rajasthan. So they had access to these raw materials, and they develop number of settlements on the trade route, in spite of the fact that the area or the trade was passing through very hostile climatic conditions, passing through this maybe dry zone, and the climate during the Harappan times was not much different from the climate that is today. And the Harappans knew that there is a always there is a dearth of water there. So what they did, in fact, that Harappans wanted to build this particular city. They have developed, maybe half a dozen settlements on at regular intervals, so that the travelers who are moving on this route, they can be given protection. The goods can be given protection. That was the kind of maybe intention of the Harappans. And in case of the this particular city, what they did, they did a detailed survey of geological and geographical aspects, and then they decided to establish this particular city between two rivers. You can see here there's a river called Manhar, small river, and the other called Mansar. These are the two small streams by the site of this Dolavira city, ancient Dolavira city. And in desert part, that there is occasional rainfall, but whenever there is a rainfall, these rivers get flash floods. And naturally, because suddenly there is a gush of water. So what the Harappans did, that they put series of dams. We have actually evidence of that. The survival of the remains of dam, and there are series of maybe check dams on both the rivers. And we surely say that these dams were built by the Harappans because after the site was deserted, it was never occupied again by any people of any culture. So whatever remains are found there, they belong to the Harappans. So they put series of dams on both the rivers. So this is really very important to learn how a city can be developed. Not just people have not just gone there and they have established this city. They went there, they studied first the geography, geology, and then they plan how the city should be. And then of course they have implemented that. So here, what they did, whenever there's a rainfall, maybe they have built these type of strong fortification walls at the site. And here, as I mentioned that that these this is one of the important monumental architecture Harappans have created. And certainly, I can say that these were created by harnessing the maybe community efforts. Maybe entire maybe city entire settlement was involved in the creation of this type of architecture, and they have done that so beautifully. So this is for the done by the people for the people. So this is a very very important evidence we have. And of course, this city had four gateways on four sides. We have the archaeologists have excavated some of them, and the gateways were very, very, very elaborate. This is the northern gate, which was very, very elaborate, because you can see that there are rooms on either side of this, of the entry, and these rooms were occupied by the security guards. So they were making sure that whosoever enters the city, they properly identify the person and then only allow the entry. So that point, that maybe precaution was taken by the Harappans, and you can see that no one has to climb the flight of the steps, then turn right, climb the flight of the step, then turn left and enter the city. And here you can see the close up of the two rooms which were for the security guard. And now you can see the maybe the street, how imposing the the gateway or the entry looks like. So this is the kind of evidence we have very very systematically done. And let me also tell you that Harappans have used the locally available raw material for the construction purpose. At Dholavira, stone is easily available, so they have cut the stone in the shape of bricks, and they have constructed, maybe these type of structures. That maybe even their house walls were made of these, stones. Whereas at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, there is no stone available. So there they made bricks, they fired the bricks, and the entire cities were made of the burnt bricks. So it is not that Harappans were not able to maybe make burnt bricks at this particular site. They were, but this since the raw material is easily available, why to make why to invest or waste the time in fact in creating mud bricks or the burnt bricks here? So that is the kind of evidence we find. Then you can see the how how beautifully the cities were plan. Here you can see the meeting of the two main streets running in one runs in north south direction, the other one in east west direction. And how perfect, in fact, you can see the corners, perfectly perpendicular. You can use, the modern maybe measuring instrument to for this for understanding this particular layout. So this is a kind of layout, and you can see the structures on both the sides. There was no encroachment at all in the street. They have followed that civic sense, very, very carefully, very strictly. And because of that, these Harappan cities were so, well built. How they have done that? Perhaps we have no idea, but we have some instruments. This is actually, evidence found at some of the sites. For example, this is a maybe a scale found, maybe measuring scale found at the site of Lothal, and there are markings on that. Probably, these type of measuring instruments were made by the Harappans, the earliest evidence of its kind. There's one more, in fact, in the lower levels, which is from the site of Harappa, and also you can see some from, maybe from Lothal again, from Kalibangan. So these are the instruments, measuring instruments used by the Harappans. So that means certainly the Harappans knew mathematics. We have no evidence, direct evidence about this, because we have not been able to decipher the Harappan script. But from this evidence, we can make inference that they were definitely good in fact in mathematics, and because of that, they were able to develop these type of measuring instruments for the construction purpose. So we have strong evidence of that. And then I come to the most important part of the Harappan city at Dholavira, perhaps the best evidence of water harvesting and water management, not only in the contemporary world, but even today, this can be considered as the best example of its kind. So we have such a long, such a, you know, hoary tradition, maybe, which was developed by the Indian people. So what they have done, as I mentioned, that that there were series of dams on both the rivers, and then whenever there's a water, maybe flash water coming or the flood water coming here, they have used this for putting the dams again the gradient pattern. They are again for the regular intervals on the slope. And this is the picture I took during the rainy season. So this type of flash water coming back, and probably the Harappans have made this type of maybe embankment for arresting water. The water was diverted inside the settlement, and they have not allowed probably the drop of water to escape from this. The entire water was diverted inside the settlement. And then, of course, first what they did in fact, to take care of suppose there is a sudden gush of water, it might maybe create some danger to the settlement or the city. So they created for the outlet of stormwater drainage. Very, very important, very scientific. So this is the first thing that they created. And then, of course, inside the settlement, the city is divided into three parts. In all the three parts, they have dug underground water tanks. And you can see these are the actual, this is the actual evidence excavated from the site of Dholavira. So this one tank, interesting now, this tank is dug into solid rock, almost 3 to 3.5 meters. And how the Harappans have done that, that is a big question mark, because they did not have, if you want to excavate in the rock, then you have to use maybe very strong iron or chisel or steel chisels. Iron was not available that time. They only had copper, and the Harappans had developed the bronze technology. Even bronze cannot be effective in excavating this in the solid rock. And probably they followed the method which is surviving even today. If you want to dig this up maybe in this maybe solid rock, you try to take out the blocks. So what Harappans must have done, that they must have maybe put or made deep and wide grooves on the periphery of the block, and then of course they must have put wooden pegs in them, and they kept pouring water, and because of water the maybe wooden pegs swelled, and they must have cracked the stone. So that cracked stone, they must have removed the block, and then perhaps with the help of maybe bronze chisels, they could have smoothened the surface at the bottom of these. So this is how the Harappans could have done, and this is very, very, very important evidence you find at the Harappan site. You can see the perhaps the biggest tank that was excavated, and again you can see flight of steps. I strongly believe that the flight of steps were not for the people to go down, because they will make the muddy, water muddy, but probably for the maintenance purpose. This facility was created by the Harappans. So they were all underground, means below the ground. Also, we find one very interesting whale. Gujarat is famous for steppe whales. The beginning of that goes back to the Harappan times. You can see this is the earliest steppe whale found anywhere in fact in India. And Gujarat, in fact, a number of these type of steppe whales were created in 6th, 7th century onward. And the most famous, of course, is Rani Ki Vav, which is also a World Heritage Site, and it is maybe 7 story underground, and it looks like upside down temple. Beautiful creation was done by the ancient people. But the beginning of that goes back to the Harappan times. So this is the kind of evidence that we have, and you can see the systematic the layout of the city. They had the fortification walls. The site was divided into three parts, and each part was separately and fortified. There's upper town which has got separate fortification, middle town has, and the lower town. Probably the people who are, having maybe higher status in the society, in the hierarchy, they were perhaps living in this part. The middle town may be owned by people who were maybe they had their offices or maybe some kind of maybe how how to execute the things. So that kind of maybe evidence is found here, and also the lower town maybe the common people lived here, people all the different maybe people following different maybe occupation they live there, maybe farmers. Even farmers may not be there because the land around is not good for agriculture, but there may be masons, there may be workers, maybe merchants, because this is connected to the trade network. So these people were perhaps living here in the lower town. And then we also have a lot of evidence of manufacturing activity. So the craftsmen also may have lived in this part. So this is a very, very important evidence. And in this picture, also between the upper town and the low middle town, there's a big gap, big open space. Now that open space is considered to be the open ground. In fact, perhaps the excavator says that calls it as a open stadium. And if that is the case, perhaps again this is the earliest evidence of its kind. Perhaps the public functions or even sports were perhaps performed there. So that is the kind of evidence we find at the site. And there are these type of water tanks of different sizes, different shapes, spread all over the city. In all the three parts, we have the evidence. And apart from that, we also find the evidence of big whales. The whale that is found here, that is the biggest whale found anywhere in the Harappan city. So why they have done that? Because suppose the water in the tank, subside, or maybe is exhausted, then there is always water available in the deep wells. So perhaps that water was taken out. You can see that uh, there's a flat stone here, and there are groove marks on that. So that indicates that perhaps water was drawn constantly from that well, and probably that was put in the underground water channel, which you can see here. But there's evidence of that. There is evidence of water channel here, which connects this particular tank. This tank was connected to this tank. Every tank was interconnected, making sure that that the tanks are filled one after the other, and there is always running water available. The big lessons, in fact, they are left behind. They have overcome the adverse situation, and they have developed such an effective, very simple but very effective technology. And today, let me tell you that the nearest town to Dholavira is Rapar, which is 130 kilometers, not 110 kilometers. And between Rapar and Dholavira, there are hardly 4 or 5 villages, and people are not making settlements there mainly because of the dearth of water. But if this evidence indicate that we can learn something from the Harappan water management system. If this system is applied today, you know every village can do that. I tell you, the entire Kutch, which is desert today, it will be green land. So there's a lot to learn from the Harappans, not only in terms of their town planning, not only in terms of how to develop the concept of city, how to execute that, but the knowledge system that they created, how that knowledge system is relevant to even today. A lot of knowledge system can be put to use even today. For example, they develop a lot of basic technologies, and even today, in fact, there are a lot of communities in South Asia who are dependent on the traditional knowledge system, and the traditional knowledge that they use is exactly 5,000 years old knowledge system they're using. So we are continuing this tradition, and the roots of that lies in fact in Harappan period. This is a part of the underground water channel that was excavated. You can see how big the water channel underground water channels are. These are women standing here. Perhaps it is 7.5 feet tall. It is 4 feet wide, and you can see the stones are eroded. That indicates how the volume of the water that was flowing through this, and because of that the stones are eroded. Secondly, now the most scientific evidence that we find is that at regular intervals there are air ducts. Even today, this is the very important component of the drainage system that we follow today, because to prevent the drainage from the blockage, for the maintenance purpose, these type of air ducts are provided. So that is the kind of evidence we find. So this is the most scientific technology that was developed by the Harappans. Today, if we want to use this, we don't need maybe foreign collaboration, because this was done by the Indians. We don't need a lot of funding for this, because this can be done by the maybe community, and this is the most tested technology that was used by the Harappans. So we can follow this technology. There's so much to learn from the Harappans. And also, they also use, for decorating the city, they made maybe some polished stone pillars also. We have found actually in situ uh, segments of the pillar, maybe pillar bases, part of the pillar. We always thought that is the concept of polished stone pillar. This particular concept or technology has come from the West, not from the West, from Iran, from Persepolis, maybe around third century, second century BCE. But that is not the case. We have the earliest evidence. Probably this concept has gone from India to Iran, not the other way around. So we have this evidence. A lot of this evidence is found, and these are some of the highly polished. These are some of the bases of different sizes and different shapes. These are some of the components of the pillar, and how beautiful the pillars were made by the Harappans. They were all polished. And also we find a lot of evidence of the manufacturing activity. They had separate workshop within the city. So city had different segments. Maybe in some area people were living, some area was devoted for the manufacturing activity. In some area maybe some public functions were carried out. So this is kind of arrangement that was made by the Harappans. And you can see the evidence, right? We have actually, this is a copper workshop. We have furnaces where the copper was heated and melted here. You can see here there are maybe anvils here. They can maybe strike the hot copper, or even cold copper can be beaten on this into desired shape. So that's kind of evidence we have from the sites. The other important creation of the Harappans, this is also perhaps, I will say that this is the engineering marvel of the Harappans. They developed the trade because they realized the importance of the trade. As I mentioned that the Harappans were getting a lot of wealth from the West, and that wealth was used by the Harappans for their own development, and that is how the Harappans have evolved from simple rural culture to urban culture at one stage. And this is a very important lesson that that is survived. I always give the example of Japan, because Japan was completely destroyed almost in Second World War. I have seen the destruction at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the entire world realized that perhaps Japan will never rise. But let me tell you that Japan rose again, on its very firm feet within 13 years. In 1964, they showcased the economic development that they made, and they became a world economic power. Maybe in 1964, which they showcased during the Tokyo Olympics. And Japan followed the same method, same maybe mechanism as the Harappans did. Harappans imported raw materials from the contemporary cultures from outside the Harappan region. Japan also started importing raw materials from India and China. These were the developing countries at that time. And then Harappans had technology in their, with them. The Japan also had technology with them. They started producing mass goods. Harappans started producing mass goods, and those goods were traded to hinterland communities, also to international community. And Japan did the same thing. They started producing finished goods, and they started supplying finished goods to the same people, same countries from whom they were importing raw materials. So this is how Japan could flourish. This is how the Harappans could flourish. So that is a big lesson, which is again left behind by the Harappans. And for developing or for facilitating the international trade, particularly the maritime trade, they were the first in the pioneers in the world to develop maritime trade. And for that purpose, they created the infrastructure for that purpose. There is a site called Lothal. where the government of India is developing the National Maritime Heritage Museum and Complex. And here, in fact, you can see this is the structure that was excavated one by Archaeological Survey of India in 50s. And there was a lot of debate happening now whether the structure is what is the structure. So SR Rao was the excavator, so he invited the people from Indian Navy, and he showed them that this is the kind of evidence. What do you think about these? So after studying, investigating in detail, the Navy people came up with the explanation that they said that this is the only function of the structure could be a dockyard, because this is a very very large structure. The in case of the walls of the houses or the structures, the bricks were set in in mud mortar, but here the bricks were set in bitumen, which is a waterproof substance like a tar. So that is one very important evidence. Secondly, inside the structure, scientists have found or they have discovered some anchor stones, some marine sails inside. So that means that this was used as a maritime port, come a dockyard. So there's a proper maybe inlet, proper outlet for this, and very very huge structure. It is 4 meter deep, 240-meter wide, 39 or 40-meter wide, 240-meter long. So this is a structure that is found. So the evidence that is found a lot, when it was excavated, this is the most important and clinching evidence. There's a sloping platform. It is called a wharf, which is attached to this particular structure. And Navy people say that wharf is always required for sliding good up and downs. And this is a very very important component of the dockyard. So they say that they come up with the explanation that this could be the earliest dockyard. This is the dockyard of the Harappan people, and this is the earliest dockyard anywhere in the world. We are the people who have developed these type of maybe technologies, these type of concepts. We have implemented them, and we are pioneer in developing ships and boats. This is the the maybe functioning of that when it was alive. The sea, it is not directly on the sea, but it is a river and port. Maybe when, during the high tidal period, the sea water comes onto the site, and that is during that time only maybe the ships can come here or go back. So this is the kind of evidence we have. You can see here in the reconstruction, how the ships can be brought in. They, whenever they want, they can simply, de hydrate this, or they can remove the water from these. They can use this for building ships, for repairing ships also, and also they can use this as a port. So this is a very very important creation of the Harappan. So the very advanced technology was adopted by the Harappans, and this is the creation of the Harappans. And the entire world has learned, in fact, from the Harappans how to develop the modern dockyards and how to build the ship and boat. You can see this is the evidence of the two kinds of boats they built. One is the plank boat with a flat bottom. This was the ship which was used for long distance, maybe travel, maybe deep sea travel, because you can see inside the boat or ship there is a structure house inside. When you are traveling, in fact, in number of nights, you need this facility. And there are also birds there, because birds can locate the nearest. When you are traveling in the sea, the birds can locate the nearest land. So this is the facility, this is the evidence that we have. And today, in fact, when I visited Mohenjo-daro, I could see that exactly the same replicas of the flat bottom, of the ships and boats are being used in the, by the local communities for travel, for trade. And this is one of the photographs of that. The other boat that they used was the boat made from the long grass, reed boat it is called. And this is made from the grass. Even today, of course, that these type of boats are made in Iran, Iraq, which is the part of Mesopotamia. And probably the Mesopotamians developed this technology, and probably Harappans borrowed these. But the in case of the flat bottom wooden plank boards are concerned, this is the Harappan invention. So this is the kind of evidence we find. And finally, who are the people, who have developed the civilization, perhaps the most advanced civilization in the contemporary world. And certainly, we do find some urbanization in Mesopotamia. We do find some urbanization in the Egyptian cities, but that urbanization was in the form of maybe those big pyramids, big temples, big life-size images, and the development around the palaces only. We don't have palaces. So that one thing is clear that there were no kings and queens in the Harappan levels. So that is quite clear. And there were a number of hypotheses. Some people say that Harappans maybe they were local people. A lot of scholars thought that they came from outside, particularly the British or the colonial historians, archaeologists. They always thought that people from the west, particularly from Mesopotamia or Egypt, they came here. I just showed you that. I showed you one picture that Mesopotamians particularly and the Egyptian they had standing army, and some scholars mention that the Egyptians, even Mesopotamians, were very aggressive people, and probably they came here and developed a new civilization. That is all without any evidence, of course. This is the hypothesis, but now we have a very strong evidence. We have done this, the DNA of the Harappan people, and the title itself suggests that an ancient Harappan genome lacks ancestry from steppe pastoralists or Iranians, because it was always thought that the so-called Aryans came from outside and they killed the local people and they established a new ancestry here. That is not the case, and this particular research was published in a very very prestigious journal called Shale, which is considered the topmost science journal in the world. And in 2019, after the publication, there's a big organization called International Conference on Genomics, and they identified 9 breakthrough researches in the world, and this research was considered to be one of them. So this means that the research and the evidence that we have created that has been accepted by the entire world community, world scientific community, and it is now clear that the distinct South Asian ancestry developed maybe around 12,000 years ago. The same genes continue in the Harappan people, and from Harappan, it continues to the modern people also. So most of us, from Andaman Nicobar to Kashmir, and from Afghanistan to Bengal, most of us are carrying the strong Harappan genes. There's a lot of mixing, of course, right from the beginning of settled life. There's a lot of mixing happening. So a lot of ideas, were flowing from one region to another region. People were coming from outside. People were going, maybe to different places. Also, the evidence that we have uh, found clearly mentioned that the first Harappans began to go to Iran and to Central Asia, and then after that, there's a lot of reciprocal movement happening among the people. So the movement started, or the space of the movement maybe picked up after the development of the contact by the Harappans with that region, and that is reflected again in the properly in the archaeological data. So now, no doubt that most of the developments that is done in Indian subcontinent, right from the beginning of agriculture, cultural development from rural culture to urban, that was all done by the indigenous people, and we are proud about that. So the knowledge system that was created, these are the people who were the best civil engineers in the past. They were very much competent, capable of creating, so many, maybe facilities, infrastructure for the common people. This is the difference. Harappans have created these facilities for the common people, whereas in West, that was created only for the ruling class, not for the common people. So that is the end of my, a brief talk. But I would like to mention that we are proud about this development, and this is the most scientific evidence we have created. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing with us the great history and engineering creations of Harappans. Especially being civil engineers, that was a really inspiring session for all of us. Thank you so much, sir. Now we will have a discussion session where our participants can interact with Shinde sir to clear their queries on this particular topic. You can also post your queries in the chat box which is provided here. I request all the participants to come forward with your queries and have a discussion with our chief guest, Shinde sir.
Am I visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I request all the participants to please come forward and raise their doubts on this particular topic.
Yeah, if they have doubts. Yeah, I'm sure that this is a new topic. People should have a lot of curiosity to know a lot of things.
Yes, sir. I also hope that participants will come forward and discuss about this topic. So I hope that there are no queries from the participant side. So
But
let's
they can always, maybe write to me or contact me if they have any query later also.
That's very kind of you, sir. So I
Yeah.
would request the participants to note that if you have any queries, you can contact Shinde sir at any time. Sir is very happily willing to clear your doubts. So moving on with the function. Now we will have a felicitation address by respected Dr. U.S. Hari sir, Senior Member Swadeshi Science Movement, Trivandrum, and Senior Principal Scientist, CSIR, NIIST. I request you, sir, to give the felicitation address.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah. Respected Dr. Shinde, the distinguished speaker of the evening, Dr. Sridevi, former director NADPAC, Mr. I.V. Shusil, General Secretary of the Association of Engineers, Professor Jayakumari, Indian Society of Technical Education and former head of the Department of Civil Government College of Engineering, Thrissur, and Dr. K. Soman of the Energy Conservative Society. Good evening to all of you. I think you all agree with me that it was a very inspirational and enlightening lecture, providing you a vivid picture of the very golden times that this country has once been known for. So this the engineering credentials of the Harappans has been very clearly demonstrated through examples and the many citations that Professor Shinde has utilized in this lecture, provided a clear idea of what the city planning and the town planning has been about, the scientific water management system that was even capable of handling flash floods, water storage tanks made out of solid rocks. We even don't know how these solid rocks could be converted into tanks. So many of the modern amenities that we enjoy today has been with them several thousands of years ago. So that was the kind of, you know, knowledge system that these civilizations have created in those past, and are, and no wonder why. I mean, this country was, invaded by many to grab all these things for their own benefits. So that was indeed a very enlightening lecture. And on behalf of Swadeshi Science Movement, I express my very sincere gratitude to Professor Shinde for this inspiring one. I hope that the listeners, the students, the civil engineering students, or all the engineering faculties who have attended this and this lecture has immensely benefited out of the the knowledge system that was once part and parcel of this country. We hope that these kind of lectures and these kind of evidences probably inspire you all to create your own you know innovations in this field, providing solutions for the gross problems that these country face now. So once again, I thank Professor Shinde for this very enlightening lecture. And on behalf of the Swadeshi Science Movement, I express my sincere gratitude. We belong to the CSIR family, and from the CSIR side also I express my sincere gratitude. Thank you, sir.
Sir, for being with us. Next, I would like to welcome Engineer I.V. Sushil Sir, General Secretary, Association of Engineers, Kerala, and also Assistant Executive Engineer, Irrigation Department, Kerala. I request you, sir, to please deliver the felicitation address.
Good evening, everyone. I feel very privileged today to felicitate the program on behalf of the Association of Engineers Kerala, the largest engineering fraternity of the state, having 4,000 plus members. This talk series, organized jointly by the Swadeshi Science Movement and Civilianz, is of immense value in today's context. With technology advancement happening every moment, this talk series helps the young engineers and professionals to enhance their technical competence to meet the challenges of present and future. Coming to today's topic, it seems quite interesting. Besides the present and future scenario, the talk series throw light to a glorious past this time. I take this opportunity to appreciate the organizers for opting this great topic. My warm wishes for the much awaited talk of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to welcome Professor J. Kumari Ma'am, representative of Indian Society for Technical Education, Kerala, and she was also the retired professor and HOD of Civil Engineering Department, Government Engineering College, Thrissur. I request you, ma'am, to please deliver the felicitation address.
Warm good evening to one and all of you. Respected Dr. Shinde, Dr. Sridevi, and other dignitaries. I'm so happy to represent IST, Indian Society for Technical Education, and deliver my felicitations on behalf of IST. The topic was very, very good. Something like Sir said, it's a new topic. And only right now we know that how the Harappan civilization that has led to our present lifestyle. Like you said, sir, the English bond, everything, well construction, then swimming pool. And not only that, they were using the locally available materials and the brick shape, etc., for building that particular well. One in a different shape rather than what we have right now. Everything is so interesting. You have really given an insight to all of us, and we are so happy, sir, to hear you and listen to you. And looking forward to more lectures from you, sir, because this is actually a new topic, which I think probably not many of us have heard about. We know it's a Harappan civilization, but in deep you have gone, sir. And thank you so much for the very good speech that you have presented, sir. Thank you so much. On behalf of IST, I thank you, sir, and all the coordinators also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
ma'am,
so much.
for being with us. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Revit CK, General Manager, Civilianz, for expressing the vote of thanks. I request Revit to deliver the vote of thanks. Please, Revit.
Good evening, all. Here come to end of section of Let's Talk Engineering, episode 10, a joint venture of Civilianz and Swadeshi Science Movement in association with Association of Engineers Kerala, Indian Society for Technical Education, Kerala Self-Financing Engineering and Management Association, and Energy Conservation Society. Okay, let's see about this is a 10th chapter of Let's Talk Engineering. We are continuously done around 10 months. Here we are successfully completed the 10th episode and such a relevant topic of engineering capabilities of the Harappans. I firstly thank to our backbone of Civilianz, Dr. B.G. Sridevi Madam, former director, NATPAC, and also advisory member of Civilianz, and the man behind the program, Professor Dr. Wasan Shinde, former founder, Director General, National Marine Heritage Complex, Lothal. And I also thankful to Dr. U.S. Harish, Senior Member, Swadeshi Science Movement, Trivandrum. Also Dr. I.V. Sushil, General Secretary, Association of Engineers Kerala, and Professor Jayakumari V, representing us Indian Society for Technical Education Kerala, also retired professor, HOD Civil Department in GEC Thrissur. Also our Dr. K. Soman sir, President, Energy Conservation Society. Okay, here we conclude that also we can get back to our Let's Talk Engineering episode 11. Thank you all.